Holly. I'm a geologist here at Cave of the Mounds, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about some different fossils that you can find in the sluice bags that we have available if you want to do one when you come and visit us here at the cave. Or if you don't want to have to come all this way, you're free to buy them online and we can ship them to you so you can have the same kind of fun at home. So we're going to go through these little lists of fossils. The first one I'm going to start with, if you've been to the Cave of the Mounds, this is the most iconic one that we have in the cave. It's the largest one in the cave, and that is this guy right here. This kind of unassuming cone shape with these lovely lines going across them is the shell of the cephalopod. And the cephalopod is an ancient sea creature that lived many, many millions of years ago. And it was essentially a giant squid stuffed into the end of this cone shell here. And these things came in a variety of different shapes, sizes, and colors. The one inside of our cave is around 6 feet in length, just the shell. So that means that the creature, when it was alive, was probably anywhere from 10 to 12 feet long. The smallest ones were around the size of your pinky, so only a couple inches or a few centimeters. The largest one of these ever discovered was actually over 40 feet in length, which is longer than a school bus, which is pretty cool in my opinion. They were the big bads of the ocean during their time. They were huge predators that roamed around in the tropical sea that we had in this area, Wisconsin, and they are now extinct. You can't find these guys anywhere on Earth anymore. We just have the fossil remains, and the modern soft-bodied squid has taken their place. The next fossil we're going to look at is also really common inside Cave of the Mounds. In fact, we have a whole layer of rock that is just filled with these fossils. And it looks something like this. And we have a couple of them in my hands here so you can see they have a little bit of variety, but by and large, they're totally straight and they have, again, telltale lines, much like the cephalopod does, but you can see really clearly that there's a big difference both in size and in the fact that there's a taper in the cephalopod, whereas this is perfectly straight. This fossil is something known as a crinoid. Crinoids are echinoderms, which means that they're cousins of the starfish, that five-pointed sea star that we all know and love. These creatures had stems, and this is the stem that I'm holding in my hand here. And each of these lines on the stem is actually its own individual plate segment, kind of like a flattened Cheerio. And so hundreds of these flattened Cheerios were stacked one on top of the other until some of the stems got over 35 feet in length. On the bottom of this thing, this would have a holdfast, or kind of like a root system, that would hold it into the sea floor and keep it from moving around with the current. On top, it would have had essentially some kind of feather-like tentacles, and these would wave around in the current and they would filter feed and eat small things like plankton or loose algae. Despite the fact that it has a stem and roots and tentacles, which were like branches, this is actually not a plant. This was a living animal. This animal is really, really cool because these things, while they still existed, of course, 488 million years ago when the Ordovician Sea was in this area and they were all over the place, these guys actually still exist in the ocean today. If you go off the coast of the western United States into the deep ocean, you can still find tons of these guys all over the sea floor. And they come in a variety of different shapes, sizes, and colors, ranging anywhere from deep browns to bright and brilliant reds, pinks, and oranges. So they have a huge amount of variety, and for that reason, they're one of my favorite fossils in this collection. The next one we're going to talk about is also something you can find really commonly in Cave of the Mounds, and also all of this type of rock, which is the limestone that makes up the most of the southern area of Wisconsin. This one is going to be really familiar to you, more than likely, because it has a very recent and similar modern ancestor, and that is this right here. We can see it has a very nice spiral shell, and it goes from small all the way down to big and huge. And looking at it, you might already be able to guess what this is the shell of. This is a snail shell. This is also scientifically known as a gastropod shell. And what you're basically looking for whenever to identify this guy is the telltale ice cream swirl that gives away its appearance. These guys come in all different shapes and sizes. As you can see, this one is much larger and it has a much taller spiral, whereas this one is very, very teensy tiny and is kind of squished down almost. So they have a huge range. Some of the shells have bumps or patterns on them, but by and large, you're just looking for that really telltale spiral that'll tell you you're holding a gastropod snail shell. Now, the next one I'm going to hold can be found in the same areas of Wisconsin, although it's a little bit less common. And when you see it, you might actually think it's something more like a clam or a mussel. And that's going to be these guys right here. You can't see it super well just because I'm sitting a little bit far away. But what I'm looking at on my side are these really lovely lines coming all through the shell here. And this shell has it as well, but it's in kind of a radial pattern, kind of like its beams coming out like a rainbow. These two items are brachiopods. Brachiopods are, like I already said, related to clams in a certain way, except these guys were the predecessors to clams. So they are still made out of a top and bottom shell. We have the top and the bottom, and on this one we have the top and the bottom, and it had a hinge on it, so this could open and close in order to filter feed. But these guys also had what was called a pedicle, and that pedicle is essentially a foot, and it would have come out the end and stuck them into the sea floor and held them there so that they couldn't move. This allowed them to filter feed super easily, but it made it so they were also really easily outcompeted by clams and mussels, which could actively move around the ocean and swim around freely to hunt down food and other organisms. So these do also still exist today, but they're much, much less common, and they were kind of just overshadowed by the modern clams and shelled creatures that we know and love today. Now, the next couple that I'm going to talk about can't be found inside Cave of the Mounds. However, all these fossils are a little bit related in that a lot of them are found in kind of the same areas. The next one I'm going to talk about is one that a lot of us are going to recognize pretty much immediately and that we're going to think is super cool. And that is these guys right here. These are shark's teeth. We have these in all of our sluice bags, and they're super, super cool and super, super pointy. So you do want to be careful with them. A lot of them will have serrated edges on them, meaning they kind of have teeth on the teeth, so to speak. And then some of them don't look like the classic shark's tooth. They look kind of akin to shark's molars in a way. But these are also shark's teeth. They almost look like toothbrush heads. And these are still in the same category. We have a huge variety of different types of shark's teeth. Most commonly, we have the really nice and pointy lemon shark's teeth that you'll see quite a bit. But you can find a whole variety of them, and you'll likely find a whole handful inside your sluice bags while you're going through them. So keep your eyes peeled for them. The last two I'm going to talk about are related. The first one is going to be this chunk right here. This can be kind of seen in a lot of different areas of the world. This is found all over the place. This is actually a piece of petrified wood. So this is quite literally a piece of wood from a tree that felled many, many thousands or even millions of years ago. And after it fell down, it was quickly covered up by some sort of sediment, ash, soil, you name it. If it could cover it up, it helped with the fossilization process. After it got covered, it was preserved really well and protected from the elements. So over time, as it sat in that dirt or in those sediments, water would flow into it and seep into it, more than likely from rain or a nearby river. And that water would allow the minerals inside of the sediments to replace slowly over time all of the wood grain inside of the petrified wood. And you can see in a lot of instances, you actually keep the patterns of the wood grains that were originally there. So oftentimes, all you have to look for in order to identify a piece of petrified wood is whether or not it literally looks like stone wood. So these are very, very common. More than often than not, there's actually a lot of petrified forests, entire areas that were leveled by things like volcanic eruptions, especially in the Indonesian area. And those just gave us hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of whole petrified trees, which are really, really amazing. Most commonly, they're replaced by the mineral silica, but they can occasionally get an opalization, so you get a beautiful iridescent set of colors. Now the final one that I'm going to talk with you about today is somewhere between a fossil and a mineral, and that is going to be this here. Now you may be able to know exactly what it is just from seeing the color. This is amber. This is fossilized plant resin. So this can be anything from just the juice and liquid that comes from a grass stem to actual genuine tree sap. And there's a huge variety in the colors. They range anywhere from this beautiful light yellow and orange to a deep dark brownish red. And they're super, super gorgeous, and they're super lightweight. One of the best indicators for telling that you have a piece of amber is that it's semi-transparent and it feels like you're holding nothing. You could just toss this, it is feather light. And these things are very, very hard. They can be scratched quite easily, but this is solid plant resin. So this thing often contains things like pollen, seeds, twigs, leaves, even insects and bugs. And some amber actually has fossilized bird feathers inside of it, because these can just contain a variety of information. And it's actually because of that reason that Jurassic Park had all the troubles that it did. So those are the main fossils that you can find in our sluice bags at Cave of the Mounds. If you're interested in doing those, of course, while you come to the cave, we'd be more than happy to help you identify all of these. But I certainly hope I helped you out in figuring out just what you had in your bags. Thanks so much, guys.